Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. Ukraine War Frontline update for the 6th of June 2024. It's a rather quick one today. I've got a very long extra coming at you later, so I hope you don't mind about that. It's quite a divisive one as well, because I'm going to be talking about Trump, but really fascinating report that came out today about the influence organizations and people in the US who are propagating the Russian narrative. Just such a large number of people who are involved in that, and organizations. It's really quite depressing. Anyway, we're going to go through a little bit of that later. So we'll start. If you don't know what the lines on my map mean, please check out the screen at the moment. Pause the video. We'll go to the front line. You can see that there are no changes to that northern area, the attack into Kharkiv. It seems that the Russians haven't made any gains there really for a good 4 days or so. There are claims that the aviation has dropped by half. The aviation strikes, as in the KAB, KAB 500, different ordnance-sized guided glide bombs that they drop so regularly in both on Kharkiv and along this northern border, but as well down the eastern and also particularly on Dnipro fronts as well. So I think that the use of these HIMARS, taking out Russian air defenses that give cover and protection to those aircraft, mean that the Russians are possibly a little bit more tentative in flying those sorties, and they've been cut by half, which is really, really significant. Anyway, there's still lots of footage coming out from this northern area. Lots of equipment appears to have been destroyed. A Russian military blogger and Anatoly Radov confirms that Ukrainian forces managed to push back the Russians inside Vovchansk and notes the arrival of the AFU 36th Marine Brigade. He claims Russian troops are now being rotated. Looks like the Ukrainians are possibly rotating, or at least certainly bringing in a variety of reserves there. So the Russians getting pushed further and further back in Vovchansk, possibly. No change to the maps today, though, from any of the three mappers. That could change. I'm not sure. But yeah, I think this has not been a great area, not a great campaign in that area, operation for the Russians. There's been some activity just to the east of Sinkivka. I don't know, I need to check the mapping update from Andrew Perpetua. It didn't pull in the coordinates for the change here, but I think that blue area is now in line with the other two mappers. So that's a change to Andrew Perpetua's map there. But I've not got that up there, so there could well be some pins on that point, but it won't signify change from the last 24 hours, but a confirmation of previous changes from the other mappers. A very small change for Surat maps in a tree line just to the west of Krivashivka, south of Novoselivska, basically. Again, not a very big change to that area. No other activity. Sorry, there's lots of activity. No other changes to the map on the northeastern axis and down past Torska and Terny. Serebryansky Forest, very hot there, but not any mapping changes. Same for Seversk, and indeed Chaziv Yar, no changes there, which is pretty significant. Surat map still has Russians in control of this area of Kalinivka to the west of Bodanivka. I'm not sure that's the case. It appears that the Russians were the Ukrainians counterattacked there and pushed the Russians back, but Surat maps doesn't particularly like to change their mapping too often if there are changes in favor of Ukraine, or there are mistaken overzealous mapping claims initially. But yeah, no changes around Chaziv Yar, I think is positive. Quite a few around that northern part, the Avdiivka sector, where Deep State Maps has a little bit of a change in favour of the Ukrainians around Novoalexandrivka. It's probably just a bit of a rejig because it came at the same time as quite large scale. You can see where the orange pins were. This is where the previous yellow line would have been for Deep State Maps. So they've taken all of this area up here, the Russians. And for Andrew Perpetua as well, Andrew Perpetua's line was back here, as you can see. And that's now come almost in line with Deep State Maps. So that is the agreement that the Russians have had some serious success around here. That pulls it in line. That's Arkhangelska, and to the west of there pulls it in line with what Surat maps had, and then takes it a little bit further in this particular field there. So that's a challenge for the Ukrainians. They've lost that over the last 3 or 4 days probably. and some gains for the Russians around Solovyove. Extends past the mapping lines of Syriac maps and Andrew Perpetua, the deep state mapping line there, having an area just to the north of this river ravine, if you like, and just to the south of that as well. So 2 pockets of gains for the Russians there, but nothing massively significant. Obviously, that amount of land, losing that over the last few days is a challenge. But there's nothing too crazy. I mean, in Krasnohorivka, we have deep state maps saying that basically a small part of the street there was taken control of. Ukrainians have been pushed back there. But that's in line with Syriac maps, so that's more of a confirmation than a change from yesterday. And no changes to the southern front line or Dnipro either. So that is, I think, a fairly good day for the Ukrainians. They haven't lost too much. There have been complaints over the last 2 days that with all the concentration on Kharkiv, I think there's an article in Kyiv Independent saying that the Russians are just continually taking villages on the Eastern Front while we're all focusing on Kharkiv. That may be a little bit of an over-exaggeration. They are doing what they have been doing before Kharkiv started, and they're just continuing that. I don't think it's happening because the attention is diverted elsewhere. I think, actually, it's kind of slowed down along with Kharkiv happening. Yes, they are losing small areas and the odd village here and there, but it's not particularly, it's not catastrophic. It's what we would expect, given this is supposedly the time of a Russian offensive. I think if that's what you're seeing at a time of a Russian offensive, then things are all right. The question is, do the Russians have anything stored up for a larger maneuver? There are claims that they have both equipment and personnel ready for a big push, but I'm not sure where they are, and I'm fairly confident that the Ukrainians would have a good handle on where those troops and equipment are positioned and would be doing something about it. So who knows whether there is going to be a larger offensive from the Russians. I think it does make me wonder, because they are desperate for equipment. So if they are going to attack with a large number of pieces of equipment, it is, in doing so, they will have denuded other areas on the front line of that equipment. So Kharkiv is an area where the Russians are not committing much equipment at all. They're generally infantry-led assaults, and as a result, I think they are getting fairly hammered there. The drones are really active for the Ukrainians. Either they don't have equipment at all, or they are stockpiling that equipment and stopping units that really need it right across the rest of the front line by stockpiling that for a larger offensive. But, when and where that will take place and where those troops are, I can't say. Anyway, that's enough for the Frontline update. Very quick one today. Take care of yourselves, and I'll speak to you soon.